Hey everyone, Matt here from Wi-Fi Ninjas. We do wireless podcasts and wireless blogs. You can find us over at wifininjas.net. But today, what I want to talk to you guys about is wireless sensors. More particularly, I want to talk to you about a wireless sensor from the guys over at Kubicon. And now, the packaging that the Kubicon sensor will come in is a very nice green box that you can see here. Very nicely packaged. Comes with, like it says, Wi-Fi experience monitoring on the side of it, and then inside of the box you will find a nice little Raspberry Pi with the Kubicon logo on, and the actual box itself has a Ethernet port which can do PoE, so no need to plug the sensor into your mains. You can just plug it into a Ethernet port out of your switch and it powers the sensor as well. Also has multiple other ports on here as well, USB, so you can plug other devices into the USB ports of the sensor. And very nice little small wireless experience monitoring tool that you can plug in your network. But if you're not familiar with what wireless sensors are and why you would potentially need a wireless monitoring tool in your network, well, wireless networks have gone from a nice to have to a critical part of the network, and there's a real lack of end user monitoring available, and like the proactive monitoring as well. So what a wireless sensor does is that you would place it around your environment in places where you would have your wireless clients. And what a wireless sensor can do is do tests and give you reports and feedback into your infrastructure about how your wireless is performing from a client's perspective. And now the Kubicon sensor itself has a 802.11ac Wi-Fi chip in it. It is a 1x1 band radio and antenna, and it has one spatial stream. So it pretty much mirrors most typical mobile phone devices out there in the market. There are some that can obviously do have more radios and antennas, but this is going to be giving us a really good baseline for typical devices that we'll see in our network. So I'm going to just talk you through how easy it is to get it set up. It's pretty much plug and play. It's a cloud-based wireless sensor, and I've had it running in my production network for a little while now, and it's coming extremely useful for me personally, which I will explain why in a little bit. But what I want to show you is their dashboard. So bear with me 1 second, and hopefully you guys can see my screen now. And just before we talk about the dashboard, I want to just talk about a feature that the guys over at Kubicon introduced recently, which is the two-factor authentication. So when you go to log into your Kubicon portal, you'll get sent another email where you'll have to input a code that is sent to you to be able to log in, which is a really nice security feature from these guys to make sure that it's a lot more difficult now for people to be able to log into your dashboard. And what we can notice straight away, I believe, from looking at the dashboard is just how nice and clean and sleek it is to look at. So on the first page, the dashboard, we can see how many SSIDs I have, how many sensors I have, what's my license status, and lots of other nice little widgets that I'll talk through in a second. But just to explain what I've got running at the moment in my home environment, I have a captive portal SSID, which is 5 gigahertz only. I have a Wi-Fi Ninjas SSID, which is also 5 gigahertz only, and then WN2 is 2.4 gigahertz only. So I have a mixture of SSIDs. I mainly created the captive portal SSID because I wanted to show off the feature from the Kubicon sensor that they can also log on to captive portal SSIDs. So I have when you connect to the SSID, it will prompt you to open up a web page, accept some terms and conditions, and then sign in. So I think that's a very nice feature that this sensor can do, because I haven't looked at other sensors on the market. I don't believe the other ones on the market can do captive portal logins, so that's very, very useful to be able to have an understanding on how your captive portal SSID is running currently. So what can we see on the dashboard page? If we have a look at, let's look at my Wi-Fi Ninjas SSID. So the first tab that we see here is user experience, and then the overall user experience for the last 12 hours of my SSID Wi-Fi Ninjas. All seems to be working pretty well. And then the next little widget on the dashboard is wireless. So now we have some more information here with the amount of packet retries, the bitrate and the signal strength, the channel width. But what I really like here is the MCS rate. So the fact that I can see for what MCS rate the sensor is able to achieve on my wireless network. And with MCS, 8 is pretty high for what this client can do, but 9 would be the best. So I know that it's working pretty well just from having a look at what I can see on the dashboard very easily and very quickly. And now the channel width is saying that it's 40 megahertz wide, but actually my channel width at home for my Wi-Fi Ninjas SSID is 80 megahertz. So the 40 megahertz is what the sensor can do. Now the signal strength minus 54 dBm, that's pretty good. It's currently sat in another room on top of my TV unit, so that's why, and my access point is in here in my office with me, so the signal strength is still pretty good. But yeah, usually for a good signal strength, what we'd see is that the best you probably see is around minus 30, and then a really weak signal strength would probably be around minus 80. So we can kind of see we're pretty much in the middle of that, but minus 54 is still very good. And then the bit rate, so the amount of the speed that my device is able to communicate over wireless at, and then packet retry, so I can see that pretty much the device hasn't had any packet retries at all. So you can just hover your mouse over the little graph and then slide over the different dates, and then I had one packet retry today at around 12:30. And then if we scroll down, we can see the location of the device, and once you configure that, you can put in your device location. So I live just outside of London in the UK, so that's why we've got nice little green circles around here. And we can quite easily see, if I had multiple locations here, we'd be able to see how many locations I had with the sensors, and then if I had any with any SSIDs that had any issues, or some if they were being alerting, or if I had no new SSIDs. So going back to the dashboard, the top part of the page, we can quite quickly just flick through my other SSIDs, and we can see how these SSIDs are performing. So the difference between my 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz SSID, we can see the channel that the sensor is on, the protocol that it's using. It's because it's 2.4, it can only do 802.11n, which is also known as Wi-Fi 4, and yeah, the user experience is just okay. And then the MCS rate now on the wireless, we can see is slightly lower than the 5 gig, and we can see actually on my packet retries over time, there's quite a few, well, I say quite a few, there's more than what there was on 5 gigahertz, and it's just really nice and really sleek, I think, to be able to come into here and be able to see very easily how my network is performing. So now let's move on to what the next part of the Kubicon portal is, and it's the devices. So this is where you set up your sensor. I've just called mine Mats_sensor, and if I wanted to configure and add or delete any SSIDs, I just click on the little cog, and we can put in a name, a description, we can see my serial number. My mode is wireless, so you can actually do wired or wireless testing from the Kubicon sensor, so test the network from the wired perspective as well as wireless, which is really cool. And we can see set some parameters like how many times do I want to test the same SSID before switching, and then how many times do I want to change the MAC address of my device. So now we can see my device SSID settings, where I've got the captive portal and my Wi-Fi Ninjas SSID and my Wi-Fi Ninjas 2 SSID, and I'm just using pre-shared key authentication for these SSIDs, so it's really easy just to come in here, add these pre-shared keys, and then it's pretty much ready to go. And then I just add my location for my sensor, which is really simple to do, and then just hit save changes, and that's your sensor pretty much set up and configured. But what really helped me with the Kubicon sensor is our website. Since we changed hosting provider in January, we had quite a few issues with the back-end hosting of our website, the actual website would go down quite often. And what I really like is that you can add a service to the Kubicon sensor. So for example, our website, I add it as a service, and what it will do is that it will warn me and alert me if the threshold goes behind what I've set. But also, if my website isn't responding, it can send me an email notification to say, it looks like your Wi-Fi Ninja service is down. And our website went down at Friday evening, I think. Not when I was checking emails and stuff, but then Saturday morning I woke up, saw my phone and saw that I had an email from Kubicon like, oh, your Wi-Fi Ninja service looks like it's down. Tried to log onto our website, couldn't get onto our website. That's why I knew that something had happened back end that we could sort. So it meant that we saved quite a lot of downtime and that traffic for our website from the sensor, which is really, really good. And you can have a look here now, thresholds. This is where we can set those thresholds. Like I was talking for my website, my service thresholds, I've got set here for 30 seconds. I don't want to be sent a notification, but if it takes longer than 45 seconds for the device to load my website, I want it to alert me, which is really, really good. But going back to the threshold settings, say if I wanted to get notified after a warning, if my DHCP server took longer than, I don't know, 50 milliseconds, I could just type in 50 here and send notification. And now I'll get a notification if my DHCP server takes longer than 50 milliseconds to respond in time. And what I really like from the Kubicon guys is that they don't just tell you, oh yeah, what thresholds you want to set, DNS, memory, channel width, and signal strength. They actually give you a little bit of detail in the brackets to say, you know, response time in milliseconds, lower is better. So even if you're not super technical with networking, you could pretty much work out what kind of levels you want to baseline your performance of your network at. So that's really nice from those guys. And then the same for everything that it can do to test. You can set the thresholds for the warning and the alert level, and if you want to be notified at any of those, then you just hit save changes, and that's where the device gets those settings from. So moving over to captive, this is where I configured my captive portal SSID and tested it, and it's all working really well and nice. I was really impressed with how this works. And then the next tab along is the .1x. So I haven't got .1x set up at home in my environment, but I believe that the device can do like things like eat peep and eat fast types of .1x authentication. So if you have those types of SSIDs in your environment, the sensor can do those tests for you on that type of SSID with that level of authentication. And then the second from last tab, which is the reports. So having a look at the reports, we can see my device, and we can, if we click on the little bar graph here, and once it loads, we will be able to see how the reports are on my sensor for different periods of time. So at the moment we can see here it says last 30 days, so it will need a few seconds to be able to pull all of this data in, and then we can choose what network we want to look at. Say if we want to look at my captive portal or Wi-Fi Ninjas or my Wi-Fi Ninjas 2, if we want to look at a specific frequency, we can choose that here. So let's do a filter on my Wi-Fi Ninjas SSID. So I literally just choose network, Wi-Fi Ninjas, and hit filter. And then once it starts the process of doing the filtering, because I've got it set for the last 30 days, it's going to chug along for a few seconds. But what we can see is we could change that to 36 hours, 24 hours, 12 hours, or 60 minutes to pull that information. So now we can have a look at the device status. So we can see from that 30th of May to the 27th of June very easily just by hovering our mouse over the report, the day, the time, and then the device status. And we did some upgrades to my sensor, so that's why we see it go down a couple times, just to push some new features and just things like that. But we can see also on the right the device status, the time and the date, the MAC address, what IP it's using, the frequency, and the channel that it's on, the protocol, what SSID we're looking at, how much memory it's used, and all this kind of information. Now UX status, that's basically the user experience, so we can just quickly hover over and just say if it was okay or if there was an alert, and then we can go and drill a little bit deeper into what was the reason why it was okay, what was the reason why it was alerting. And if I scroll down, we can see Wi-Fi Ninjas. Now this is our website that we have, and I've got the sensor to report on if it hits a certain time to load the page to let us know, or also if it goes down, then to respond to me by email and notify me, which this really helps us get our website back up and working, not once but twice. And after the second time, we just canned our provider that we had and moved to another provider, because having a website go down was just not an option for us. But it's really easy just to set these thresholds and just to, you know, see over time like how long it takes for the sensor to load our page and the different times, which is really, really nice as well. And DHCP response time. Now, absolutely no doubt, if you're watching this video, you've probably seen quite a lot of other wireless videos or demos, or listened to podcasts, and I think probably the most famous and well-known example of reporting for this kind of information is, you know, DHCP servers slow to respond. Everyone comes in at 9 o'clock on a Monday and tries to get an IP address, and then the DHCP server slows down and stops responding, or it takes a while to get an IP address. I think that's one of the most pretty common analogies for here, but we can actually see how long my DHCP server is taking to respond, and over different days why what was happening, and the difference between when you've had different DHCP responses. So we can see over here I had one day in particular where my DHCP responses was quite high, because I had something going on my network where a device was constantly trying to get an IP address from my DHCP server, and it starved my DHCP server, and so that's why we see my DHCP response times here. But it's nice the fact that I can come back and see this over time, and I know what happened when and how to troubleshoot and how to fix it. And then we can have a look at my DNS lookup. So what I've got configured as DNS, and just again simply hover over the date and the time, and we can see the different response times, which is really clear and easy to see. And then having a look at my bandwidth download. So what the device is doing is that constant speed test, and I live in a block of shared apartments, so maximum, even though I've got the fastest possible broadband available to me, my max download is like 40-50 meg, and then upload is like 10-15 meg most of the time. So not the best, but it's the best that I can get. So like we said, this correlates when the device went down, the fact we can't see the bandwidth time. But you know, this was when we did an upgrade on the sensor, but maybe you had an outage in your part of your network, and your device would notice that because you can't see the stats anymore. So that's another good way. Say a switch went down, it got unplugged, or you know, something happened to the cable by accident, you wouldn't be able to see this information anymore. But it's just someone unplugged it, plugged it back in, we'd be able to see here the different statuses. And again, now bandwidth upload, so same as the download, but yeah, my upload speeds are not the best. So yeah, jumps between 10 to 16 megabits per second. And then we can have a look at the CPU of the device, so over the different days in the time, how much CPU is being utilized. As then the next one is the used memory, so how much memory in the device is being used, so we can see the health of our sensor. And then TX power, so this is the transmit power that's being received from the access point to my device. It's reporting how much, what it sees, the power level of the SSIDs that it's receiving. So we can just like scroll over time and just see any differences, but it's all pretty much the same because it's a sensor, sits in the same position, so the power level is not going to change too much. But YouTube time, so how long does it take for the device to go and play a YouTube video? So one of the tests that the sensor does is it will go off to YouTube, try and play a 30-second video, and if it can't load it in 30 seconds, you could put a threshold in, just like I have for some of the other thresholds, and we'd be able to get a report for that. And then packet retry, so we can see, have a look at my packet retries over time, pretty much because I've got quite a clean 5 gig environment here. I wouldn't expect to have too many packet retries, so the maximum retries is at 2, so that's really, really low. So that's really nice that we can go back over time and see the packet retries. If this was a much more busier environment, maybe 2.4 gig, we'd see a lot more packet retries here, which could be a factor to why you're having issues on your network if you've got a lot of packet retries. So if you can see that, you can troubleshoot it, try and fix it, and get your network working optimally. So bitrate, again, this is what the maximum speed of data rate that the sensor can transmit data at over wireless. So it jumps around fairly a lot, which is what I would expect of a wireless client to, sometimes multipath could happen, sometimes I could walk in the way of the sensor and it wouldn't have the same signal strength, so it's got to drop down its data rate. Very normal natural behavior, and we can see when my device went offline for a couple of those upgrades. And then what we can see here actually, which is quite interesting, is that I actually changed the position of where I have the sensor in my apartment. I had it originally on my office desk next to my access point, which is where we see the signal strength usually around between 33 to 37 dBm, but then I moved it from my office into my front room to plug it into a new switch that I have. Now we can see that's when I obviously moved it, and now we can see the difference in signal strength, that it's actually in another room behind my wardrobes, behind a wall, and now it's pretty much got a, sometimes 10, sometimes even more dB difference just from being in the next room. So it's just a standard drywall, but the fact I've got quite a big wardrobe in the way, that can play a part to why my signal strength is quite a bit different here now. So that's really interesting to see actually, because I haven't looked at this myself personally. So, but you could potentially move the sensor around in your environment as well, and you can see how your network's performing in different parts of your environment. Now the channel width is going to pretty much always be the same because I'm not changing my channel width here, but if you had for some reason in your deployment different width channels, you'd be able to see on your access points, you'd be able to see here your different sensors what they can see the channel width at. And I think this is coming down to some of the last features that we can see. The test data is the MTS rate, so a bit like the data rate, it bounces around a little bit, but I would expect that from a wireless client. But the fact is, it's pretty mostly at 8 or 9, and that is the maximum it can achieve. So just from a really quick glance, we can see that my wireless network is performing pretty well because it's been able to achieve like a higher MTS rate. If this was dropping down to below 5, 4, or even 3, I would know the client was having issues, and I would want to look into why I'm not able to achieve a higher MTS rate. And then the frequency, so my channels are not changing. I have it static here on one access point, so it's always going to be the same frequency. But if you did have multiple SSID, multiple access points that it was testing, we'd be able to see here the different frequency that's being used here. We won't see this load times because I'm not on the captive portal SSID. I wonder if I just change to the captive portal one very quickly, and then I can show you how long it's taken to load my captive portal SSID over time, which this might be quite useful for some of you guys if some of your networks has captive portals. So I'll just scroll through quickly, and now we can see this test here. We can see how long it takes to load the captive portal. So really it's actually taking the device around 30 seconds each time to load a captive portal, and I'm not a big fan of captive portals myself. I would never implement them if I can, but sometimes you need to have them in your network. I understand that. So now we can test and show you how long it takes for each time for the device to load the captive portal. Really cool, nice feature from these guys. And then the final, very last tab that I just want to talk to you about is the support. You can log on to here for if you need some technical support. I think there's frequently asked questions, and you can log a ticket if you need to, or you can contact your account manager. So that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you are interested in a wireless sensor, or you want to speak to the Kubicon guys to maybe arrange a demo for yourselves, I think if you just search Kubicon on any of the browsers, you'll be able to find them, but it's kubicon.io. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I will speak to you guys soon.